So I think it asks you if you're okay to be recorded now. So yeah, hopefully you'll all say yes. If you don't want your lovely faces on, you could always switch your cameras off and that. But welcome to the Lion in Winter exposition, our show for late March, early April next year, 2022. Goodness me, who would have thought? So I'm Rob, for those of you who don't know me. So hello, for those of you not met me before. I'm going to be director of the said show, and funnily enough, next to me on my screen is Dickie, who is going to be, I can't remember your title again, Dickie, what are you going to be?
Oh, Deputy Executive Production Manager.
Yes.
Oh, we add a title every time.
Yes. Yes.
Does that translate as dog's body?
Yes.
Bob's bitch.
Rob's bitch. Yes, that's exactly what it translates as. So Dickie's going to do all the jobs that I don't want to do, basically.
So I don't know if are people aware of who Danny Wallace is? Danny Wallace? He wrote a book called The Yes Man, where he decided that for a year he would say yes to everything. And I sort of feeling because I don't know how I said yes to this, but I said I'd help out.
Excellent. So, Lion in Winter by James Goldman. That's the play we're going to be doing. I don't know, show of hands, how many people have actually read the play?
What play?
A couple. Okay. So, what I thought would be useful to do would be to start off with a bit of historical background. And anybody who was in Richard III will remember James's superb history lesson at the start of the Expo, which we then actually made part of. David, take your head out of your hands. We then made part of the actual experience of coming to the theatre. So I asked James to put together a few lines about Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine to give the play some historical context for you all. So, James, if you'd be so kind.
It was the best of times. This is short. So as Rob says, this is really it's a character-driven play rather than an events-driven play like Richard. So not as much to cover. And it's really about, power and betrayal, love and loss, aging and death, the timeless themes. And the event that it portrays, this meeting at Chinon in Christmas 1183, never actually happened. But it is based on meetings between various characters that happened through 1184 and 1185. So who are our characters? Henry is King Henry II, well known for murdering Thomas à Becket. Born in 1133, ascended to the throne 1154, and died in 1189. So he's a 50-year-old at this point in the play. And what you need to remember about Henry is that he was forged in war. His mother was the Empress Matilda, the eldest daughter of King Henry I of England. And Matilda fought a long civil war, known as the Anarchy, with the King of England, Stephen. And this is because Matilda was the nominated heir of King Henry I, but her cousin Stephen sided with the barons and didn't want a woman on the throne, etc., etc. So Stephen seized the throne. When Stephen's son died and there was no heir left, then a peace deal was agreed between Matilda's side and Stephen's side that allowed Stephen to remain king and then be replaced by Matilda's son, who is Henry II of the play. So the first 20 years of Henry's life were set to the sounds of civil war. And it's even reported that his first military expedition against Stephen was at the age of 14. So Henry married Eleanor of Aquitaine in 1152 when he was 19 and she was around 30. And they had 8 children, 3 daughters and 5 sons. Of the 5 sons, William, the eldest, died only at the age of 3. Then Henry, known as Henry the Young King, died at the age of 28 in June 1183, so 6 months before the setting of the play. And that leaves Richard, Geoffrey and John, who are all characters. Much of the play is about who should succeed Henry. And that might sound slightly odd to us because we're used to the rule of primogeniture, the oldest is the heir and takes the throne. But that really, in the context of the 12th century, that wasn't what happened. So not only did we have this civil war from which emerged Henry as king, but even Henry's grandfather, Henry I, seized the throne ahead of his own older brother. So they're all sons of William the Conqueror. So you had William the Conqueror, then the eldest, William Rufus, who had an unfortunate accident down the A35. And then it should have been his brother Robert, but Robert was away crusading. So the youngest, Henry, thought, right, I'm going to go in, take the throne. And that's what he did. So them arguing about who gets the throne and who gets what, even though some are older and some are younger, is not so odd. Eleanor, who married Henry in 1152, had been married to Louis VII, the King of France, for 15 years prior to marrying Henry. The marriage with Louis was annulled on the basis of consanguinity, or their blood being too close together. But in reality, it was because they didn't have any sons. And of course, that was what was needed. But she was allowed to keep her lands, Aquitaine, when her marriage was annulled. And of course, this made her an attractive proposition for Henry, because he already was Count of Normandy and Count of Maine and Anjou, which is this huge chunk of sort of northwestern France. With Aquitaine, he then gets the whole of the southwest of France and much of the central south of France. So he basically had France from the Channel down to the Pyrenees on the west side. So they married, but it'd be a mistake to think of her simply as Henry's wife. She was one of the most powerful women in Western Europe in the period known as the High Middle Ages. She was a great patron of the arts, and she was even a war leader, going so far as to lead the Second Crusade. She was also, as you can see in the play, a constant thorn in Henry's side, and in the later years of his reign, and was instrumental in the revolts of her sons against their father. There was the Great Revolt of 1173, so 10 years before the events of the play, in which Henry, the young king, so the eldest son of Henry and Eleanor, allied with Richard and Geoffrey to take on their father, all of which was encouraged by Eleanor. And that might explain Henry's favouritism towards John in the play, because John is the only one who's not involved because he's far too young at that point. The punishment for Eleanor was that she was imprisoned and spent the 10 years up to the point of the play in various castles around Europe. Ironically, though, she did outlive Henry and lived well on into John's reign, not just Richard's. Then we have the sons. So Richard, later King Richard I, the Lionheart, Geoffrey, and John, later King John, the Cartoon Lion. They're the three remaining sons of Henry and Eleanor, and they were a constant state of plotting or open revolt against either their dad or themselves, all to determine who would inherit what parts of Henry's empire. After the Great Revolt of 1173, there was a second war, again led by Henry the Young King and Geoffrey, which was triggered because Richard the Lionheart refused to pay homage to his older brother. Those events took place just before the play, the period of the play, and young Henry has just died from dysentery, not from war, in June 1183. So then Richard becomes the older brother, and therefore the heir to the throne. But Henry, his father, demanded that he gives up Aquitaine to give to John as John's inheritance. And Aquitaine is this, as I say, this huge area of France. So Richard was pretty unhappy about that and refused to do so, which led to further conflict. And then finally, following Geoffrey's death in 1186, so after the play, there was a final revolt when Richard ended up joining with King Philip II of France, and they basically beat their dad, beat Henry, although he remained on the throne for another 2 years until he died. So just the way that the characters are described, or the sons are described, contemporary chroniclers describe Richard. He was tall, of elegant build. The colour of his hair was between red and gold. His limbs were supple and straight. He had long arms suited to wielding a sword. His long legs matched the rest of his body. Of Geoffrey, the chronicler Gerald of Wales wrote, "He has more aloes than honey in him. His tongue is smoother than oil. His sweet and persuasive eloquence has enabled him to dissolve the firmest alliances, and by his powers of language able to corrupt 2 kingdoms. Of tireless endeavour, a hypocrite in everything, a deceiver and a dissembler." And then finally, John, the youngest, who according to French chroniclers was known for his opulent clothes and his fondness for bad wine. He was genial, witty, generous and hospitable, but yet at the other moments was jealous, oversensitive and prone to fits of rage where he bit and gnawed his fingers in anger. So there's the brothers. The final 2 characters are Philip and Alais. Philip is Philip II, the King of France, born in 1165 and therefore around 17 at the time of the play. His father was Louis VII of France, previous husband of Eleanor of Aquitaine, but his mother was Louis's 3rd wife rather than Eleanor, his 1st wife. As King of France, of course, his desire was to expand the territory of the kingdom as much as possible, which included the French elements of the Angevin Empire, so Normandy down to Aquitaine. Hence his efforts to stir up dissent between Eleanor, Henry, and the 3 sons. There is a reference in the play to a sexual relationship potentially between Richard and Philip. Current historical thinking is that stems from a misreading of contemporary chronicles, and that actually they shared the same bed as a symbol of unity. And one historian likens that to a modern day photo shoot. Nonetheless, it remains an important part of this play. And then finally, Alais of France, the Countess of Vexin, again a child of Louis VII, this time by his 2nd wife, and therefore a half-sister to Philip. Slightly older, born in 1160, she is 23 at the time the play is set. Now, Alais was promised to Richard when she was just 8 years old, and she was raised in England as Henry's ward, but that didn't stop Henry taking her as his mistress, which is a bit dodgy. And they probably had a child together. And Alais is very much caught in the middle. Henry needs her dowry, which is the area, the county of Vexin, because Vexin is between Rouen in Normandy, part of his empire, and Paris, so Philip's capital. But Richard can't or won't marry her because his dad's got there first. Nor, however, is he allowed to publicly renounce her because she is a sister of Philip II, who is a very important ally to England. They need to keep him sweet. So she is caught up in the machinations of powerful men. And in the end, Richard goes off and marries somebody else without even bothering to break off his engagement with Alais. So she's kind of left high and dry. So that's it. That's the context of the play. That's who they are.
Thanks,
Shorter
James.
this time, much shorter than last time.
Thank you very yes. Thank you very much, James. So you can see the context in which the play is happening. There, what a family, eh? What a family! And sort of that whole theme just continues through the whole of the play. So I thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of the characters of the play first, and then we'll sort of do a quick run through the play with some excerpts from it, so you get a feel for what happens and what people are like and that sort of thing. So the characters themselves. Henry, he is the lion, 50 plushes in the play. For those of you thinking about being Henry, 50 plus-ish,
That's me.
Ages are all sort of relative to each other in this, so we have to just keep that in mind. Gets described quite often as physically impressive. They talk about how big his arms are still, sharp, witty, a bully, totally relentless. But somehow you've still got to quite like him. He can't come across as completely nasty. You've still got to quite like Henry, I think. You're very used to getting his own way through foul means or fair. The end always justifies the means, and he's quite willing to do deals and break deals and change deals and make things up on the spot to get what he wants in the end. I think the problem is sometimes he doesn't actually know what he wants, and that sort of evolves as the play goes on. So that's something that we could play with. Eleanor, absolutely fantastic part. I think she has some of the actual best lines in the play, some real zingers, there's some real wit there, and there's some comedy that we can certainly play with. Funny, cutting, cruel. She professes at times to be still in love with Henry, but is she really? I don't know. Again, that's something that the actress who plays Eleanor can decide. Is that part of the manipulation, or is that real? And that's something for all the characters, I think, is what is real and what's manipulation, and how do you get that across to the audience? Will be a fun thing to do. She's meant to be older, as James said, than Henry. Was it 11 years, 12 years, James? Something like that. A little bit older Henry, but again, still impressive, formidable. And she's got a scene that she does with a looking glass, and she starts off saying, no, I can't look at it because it's so tactless. And then at the end, she looks at it and go, no, actually, you're all right. So yeah, so there's still got to be a sort of still that attractiveness around her as well. Then we've got Richard in the play. He's warrior, very direct. Ellen's got this great line about you can always go and see Richard wherever he's killing people. And that's kind of like what Richard is like. Man of action. He was devoted to Eleanor, but something's happened. Some was a betrayal, so he's very wary of her. And there's a whole great scene where he eventually sort of succumbs, and then she does stitch him up in the very next scene again. So it sort of like gets repeated, this whole sort of draw him in and then let him go type stuff. He definitely thinks he should be king. Him and John have a very antagonistic older brother, younger brother relationship. I don't think they ever say a nice word to each other, certainly not Richard to John. I put, needs to look hard. He needs to look hard, needs to look like he's a warrior, needs to look like he can handle himself, and he is the slightly older brother than Geoffrey. And I thought that description of Geoffrey, it was perfect. That must have been the character notes that Goldman used, because he sharp, clever, described as being more gears and wheels than human. Plots and counter plots, and he is definitely one where you're never sure, is he telling the truth? What's the sort of the hidden message, or the hidden message within the hidden message within the hidden message type sort of thing. In the play, he is never considered for king. And that's one of the things that he irks him. He mentions it a couple of times that, you know, why doesn't anybody ever think of me when you think of king, kind of thing. John, the youngest, in the play, probably the furthest from the descriptions that James just gave you there. He's sort of the youngest of the three sons. He's meant to be, I think, a bit inept, a bit stupid. They talk about how slovenly dressed he is, the fact he smells, he's got pimples. Everybody thinks he's a bit stupid. Even he thinks he's a bit stupid, behaves like a spoilt brat. Henry does his best to love him, but you get the impression that Henry's tried so many times to get him to be kingly, and then catches him shagging the sheep and goes, oh, not again, and makes another excuse for him. And he's just, yeah, just grotty and that sort of thing. Very little. He mentions about how little contact he's had with Eleanor. He's very contemptuous of her, and there just doesn't seem to be that mother son thing going on at all with those two. But yeah, spoilt brat, I think, is a great way to think of John. Alice. So Alice was supposed to have married Richard, but as James said, she now is Henry's mistress. So she's quite a tricky character to play, I think. She's young and pretty, obviously, compared to Eleanor, who's obviously a lot older. Get to think that she's quite long-suffering. She's used to Henry and his machinations and things. He describes her son at one point as so sweet she makes your teeth ache. And what's interesting is that this version of the play is a new version that's come out, and Dickie has the old version. I don't know if you've got it there to wave, Dickie. Yes, there's the old version that we did when we did this before, like 25, 30 years ago, whenever it was. And there's a new scene, and there's a whole new scene added between Alice and Philip, which is quite interesting in the new version. where Alice basically says, Philip, you don't need to do anything, wait for them to die, and then you can have what you want. So that scene sort of really, I think, changes Alice and the way we see Alice and what goes on with Alice. So, which in some ways it's quite nice, it adds another dimension to her so that we can play around with. So she's not quite as just sweet and bendable as she first appears to be. And then we've got Philip, who is the new King of France, and we say only meant to be 17. So in some ways he's got to be the youngest person in the play, because Alice also talks in this scene about how she used to look after him when he was a baby. Henry refers to him as boy all the time, keeps on about how new he is to this stuff, keeps on about how much he's got to learn, all that sort of thing. He's a little bit arrogant, but he's determined not to get beaten by Henry, and he makes lots of references to how the fact his father Louis, that James talked about, always used to give in to Henry. Henry always used to get what he wanted out of Louis, and so he's determined not to do that. And in the play, he makes reference to the affair with Richard, saying he only did it so he could tell Henry all about it, just to let him know what a shit his son was, basically. But yeah, he's sort of like the new kid on the block, but realizes he's got some powers, and in some ways he does hold quite a lot of the chips. So an interesting part to play. There's a wonderful farcical scene almost at one point in the play where Geoffrey turns up in Richard's chamber to make a deal, and then Richard then turns up. So Geoffrey hides behind arras. Richard is halfway through making a deal, and Henry turns up, and then it turns out that John was behind the other arras, and so Geoffrey then comes out, and it's just almost farce going on there. So it's a fun thing. The one other character sort of thing is that I need a set crew for this. So if anybody doesn't want to do a part but fancies being part of the set crew in terms of coming along and shifting stuff, and I'll explain about the set in a little while, yes, it would be lovely to have 3 or 4 people who we can turn into a slick team who will be moving bits and pieces around, because we've got no physical set as such. It will just be things like chairs and tables and cloths and what have you. So if you think not really interested in a part, or there's not a part for me, but I'd still like to be involved, there's still the chance if you want to come along and get involved. All right, so that's the characters. Any questions about characters before we move on to the play itself? No?
With the ages of some of the other characters.
That's it. It's just 7 people. There are no other characters.
No. Are there any ages? You gave us the age of Henry.
Well, Henry 50 plus-ish, I can't say that word. And then all the others just have to look like they were able to be fathered or mothered by Henry and Alice. Yeah. And I think in my head, Philip has to be the youngest, or at least look the youngest. Yes. And so Richard could be, mid-30s, couldn't he, I suppose? Something like that, and the others down from that. So yeah. Okay, so it kind of all, it's the way people look, but they have to look as if they were old enough to have been fathered or mothered by whoever's supposed to be their father or mother. But I'm not too hung up about, in the play they do mention ages quite a lot, but we can always change those. Hey, I changed Shakespeare, I can change this. So what I've done is I've done sort of a synopsis of the play, and we'll work our way through it scene by scene. And then I've got some people to read in some parts. So James is going to read Henry for me when we get to Henry bits, and Sue's going to read Eleanor bits for me. And I'm going to do Richard. Geoffrey's going to be Ben. So thank you very much, Ben. John is going to be Tyrone. Forget everything I said about John. Tyrone. That's not how I see you at all. Alice is going to be Paula, and David is going to play Philip. Of course. Okay, so when we get to the bits, those will read in the various bits. So, and the other thing I should mention is the bits that we're going to read are also going to be the audition pieces. So I'll send those out via Facebook and via the email. That's the word. Thank you. Email as well. All right. So we're going to whiz through the whole play with the various little segments in. So, I can't read what I'm writing today. So we first meet, first thing is Henry and Alice. She doesn't want to get involved at all in the dealings that are going to go on because Philip's turned up to discuss the marriage. So she's saying, oh, just leave me out of it, leave me out of it. I don't want to get involved in the politicking. And Henry's saying, no, come on, you've got to be there. You've got to be supportive. So straight into our first little chat between Alice and Henry in Act 1, Scene 1.
James.
It's with James.
You ready, James?
Yep.
Henry, I was brought up to be dutiful. I smile a lot, bend easily, and hope for very little. It's useful training, and it's made a lot of hard things possible. But Henry, not this thing.
I've had them summoned, and I'll have you by me, with the headdress or without it.
Oh, what difference does it make? Who's king?
What difference?
Have you found religion, Henry? Are you going to look down from the clouds and see who's sitting in your place?
I've got to know before I die. I've built an empire and I've got to know it's going to last. I've put together England and I've added to it half of France. I'm the greatest power in 1,000 years. And after me comes John. If I can't leave this state to John, I've lived for nothing.
John doesn't care for you at all.
We love each other deeply.
None of them have any love for you.
Because we fight. Tell me they all three want the crown. I'll tell you it's a feeble prince that doesn't. Oh, they may snap at me or plot, and that makes them the kinds of sons I want. I've snapped and plotted all my life. There is no other way to be a king, alive and 50 all at once.
I'm going to fight for you.
Oh, fine.
When I was 16 and we started this depraved relationship, I left everything to you. I lap-sat, drank my milk and did what I was told. Not anymore. Your cherub's 23 now and she's going to fight.
Hey, thank you very much. Okay, so first little scene, so we get an idea of what Henry's like, a bit cocky, and Alice saying, you know, it's all changing now. Henry says towards the end of that scene, he doesn't plan to give Alice up. He plans for by the end of the session at Christmas at Chinon that John's going to be heir, Richard's going to be a pretty prince, and Alice will still be his. So that's the end of scene 1. So scene 2 starts, and we meet John, Richard, and Geoffrey for the first time, and in comes Eleanor into the bickering. And they sort of say, oh, hello, Mum. So we've got a quick little scene here with Eleanor, in fact, Sue, and Richard, and John, and Geoffrey. Am I one of those?
Geoffrey.
So, when you're ready, Sue, enter the bickering.
Geoffrey, but I do have handsome children. John, you're so clean and neat. Henry takes good care of you. And Richard, don't look so sullen, dear. It makes your eyes go small and piggy and your chin look weak. Where's Henry?
Upstairs with the family hall.
That is a mean and tawdry way to talk about your fiancée.
My fiancée.
Whosoever fiancée, I brought her up and she is dear to me and gentle. Have we seen the French king yet?
Not yet.
Let's hope he's grown up like his father, Simon pure and Simon simple. Good Louis. If I'd managed sons for him instead of all those little girls, I'd still be stuck with being Queen of France, and we should not have known each other. Such, my angels, is the role of sex in history. How's your father?
Do you care?
More deeply, lamb, than you can possibly imagine. Is my hair in place? I've given up the looking glass. Quicksilver has no sense of tact.
He still plans to make John king.
Of course he does. My, what a greedy little trinity you are. King, king, king. 2 of you must learn to live with disappointment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, after that little bit, in comes Henry, and he explains he's going to negotiate with Philip, and he expects all of the boys to support him. Philip enters, and he says that either Alice gets married to Richard, or he's going to have the Vexan back. And Henry says he hasn't got an offer yet, but he'll think of one. To which Philip is quite annoyed, so he storms out. So Richard and John exit, and Geoffrey says he's going to support John to be king because John has promised to make him chancellor. And Eleanor says she prefers Alice to any of her sons because they're all gits. So we have a second little excerpt from that scene, which is the Act 1, Scene 2, which is the Henry and Eleanor bit, James, and so it's towards the end of the scene.
How hard do you find living in your tower?
It was difficult in the beginning, but that's past. I find I've seen the world enough. I have my maids and my menials. In my courtyard, I hold my little court. It suits me now.
I'll never let you out. You've led too many civil wars against me.
My damn near won the last one. Still, as long as I get trotted out for Christmas courts and state occasions now and then, for I do like to see you, it's enough. Do you still need the Vexin, Henry?
Need you ask?
My strategy is 10 years old.
It's as crucial as it ever was. My troops there are a day away from Paris, just a march of 20 miles. I must keep it.
Oh, I think that's all the jollying this room can stand. I'm famished. Let's go into dinner.
Arm in arm.
And hand in hand, you're still a marvel of a man.
And you're my lady.
Henry, dear, if Alice doesn't marry Richard, I will see you lose the Vexin.
Well, I thought you'd never say it.
I can do it.
You can try.
My Richard is the next king, not your John. I know you, Henry. I know every twist and bend you've got, and I'll be waiting round every corner for you.
Do you truly care who's king?
I care because you care so much.
So battle lines are drawn. We now know that Eleanor is definitely going to oppose Henry in what he's trying to do. So the next scene happens in Eleanor's chamber. So Richard has agreed to go and see Eleanor, and that's where we find out that they used to have this close relationship, but he now thinks that she's sort of only ever used him, and he's very upset about it. John and Geoffrey turn up, and so does Henry and Alice. And at that point, Henry suddenly announces that actually he's changed his mind. He's giving everything to John. Everything's going to John. Everything's going to Richard. Richard can have Alice. She can have the Equitaine. He can have the crown. He has the whole lot. John is obviously heartbroken, but threatens Richard and Eleanor that he's going to start a war and they'll get what's coming to them, because he thinks he's obviously been betrayed by Henry at that point. He says he leaves, but Geoffrey won't go with him. He's going, come with me, Geoffrey. He goes, no, no, no. So Geoffrey stays, and Geoffrey says, I'm swapping sides. I'll be on your side because you're going to win, and I'm just going to let John drop. And Eleanor says she doesn't believe him, so he can sod off, and he goes, right, in that case, I will. So we're not quite sure whose side Geoffrey's on at that point. Eleanor then tries to play Richard, but he resists until she pretends that she's going to stab herself. So from that scene, we have a little bit with John and Eleanor and Richard. So Act 1, Scene 3.
Father's coming with the treaty terms.
No doubt he's told you what they are.
He doesn't have to. Don't you think I know what's what?
Of course you do, dear. Has he put the terms to Philip?
Not yet, but we're shortly granting him an audience. I hope you will attend.
Are we to know the terms, or have you come to tease us?
What are you going to give Philip? What of mine?
Whatever you've got goes to me.
And what's the nothing Geoffrey gets?
Oh, for God's sake, boys, you can't all three be kings.
All three of us can try.
That's pointless now. The treaty calls for you to marry Alice, and you shall. I want you to succeed me, Richard. Alice and the crown, I give you both.
I've no sense of humour. If I did, I'd laugh.
I've used you badly, haven't I?
You've used me cleverly and well.
Not anymore. I mean to do it.
What's about me? I'm your favourite. I'm the one I'm the one you love.
John, I can't help myself. Stand next to Richard. See how you compare. Could you keep anything I gave you? Could you beat him on the field?
You could.
But John, I won't be there.
Let's fight him now.
How can I? There's no way to win. I'm losing too, John. All my dreams for you are lost.
You led me on.
I never meant to.
You're a failure as a father, you know that.
I'm sorry, John.
Not yet, you're not. But I'll do something terrible, and you'll be sorry, Nan.
Ooh. So we've now got John pissed off. We got Richard being offered everything, but simply not believing it. So Act 4 is where everybody starts to try and make some moves. Geoffrey, this happens in Philip's bedroom. So Geoffrey turns up saying he hasn't really dropped John, and he says to John, sorry, my wife's coughing in the background, says to John with Philip, if with John and Philip, if they all tried to go against Henry at this point, they could beat Richard, Eleanor and Henry, which is actually treasonous to say you're going to go against the king. Henry turns up and offers Eleanor her freedom if she gets the Aquitaine from Richard so he can give it to John. Now, Eleanor is, of course, very tempted by this because she's, as James said, she's been locked up for 10 years. So the deal is at this point that Eleanor's to go free, John's to get the Aquitaine, Richard is going to marry Alice, and Philip will be happy because he gets what he wants. But Eleanor doesn't believe him. Eleanor thinks, she says, okay, well, if that's the case, let's have the marriage now then, if Richard is really going to marry Alice. So Henry goes, okay, we'll do it. Get a priest, get a priest, get a priest. So they all get called into a room together. But Henry says, okay. Richard says, what are you giving up of mine? What am I not getting if I'm now getting the crown? And that's when Henry says, well, your mother says you'll give me Aquitaine, of course. And Richard goes, no. In that case, she's not worth the Aquitaine. I want nothing to do with her. So everything is off. It's very off-putting with you coughing.
I'm sorry.
So everything's off and we're back to square one, except that Richard, somewhat stupidly, threatens to go to war with Henry. So Henry says, right, if you're going to go to war with me, you're a prisoner in Poitiers, you're not allowed out, you have to stay here. And John suddenly realizes, hey, if he's at war with him, I'm king again, which is fantastic for him. So we've got a little section of that, Act 1, Scene 4. Act 1, Scene 4. Listen to the line, Richard. Oh, it's me. It's so difficult when you've got a headache and you don't feel well. Right. Oh, listen to the lion roar.
Don't spoil it, Richard.
How's your bad leg?
Better, thank you.
And your back and all the rest of it? You're getting old. One day you'll have me once too often.
When? I'm 50 now. My God, boy, I'm the oldest man I know. I've got a decade on the Pope. What's it to be? Broadswords when I'm 85?
I'm not a second son now. Your Henry's in the vault, you know.
I know. I've seen him there.
I'll have the crown.
You'll have what Daddy gives you.
I am next in line.
To nothing.
Then we'll have broadswords now.
This minute?
On the battlefield.
So we're at war?
Yes, we're at war. I have 2,000 men at Poitiers.
Can they hear you? Call and see who comes. You're as close to Poitiers as you're going to get.
You don't dare hold me prisoner.
You're a king's son, so I will treat you with respect. You have the freedom of the castle.
You can't keep me here.
Until we all agree that John comes next, I can and will.
The castle doesn't stand that can hold me. Post your guards.
My God, I'm king again. Fantastic. It's a miracle.
John, not particularly quick on the uptake there. Okay. Oh. So, Act 2, Scene 1. Or I missed one out. Nope, that's all right. John is gloating about becoming king. So he apparently is chasing Richard around the castle, making digs at him. But actually let slip to Eleanor and Richard that he planned to treasonously start a war with Philip. So Eleanor immediately recognises that this is a chance because John has committed treason. So if Henry finds out that John has committed treason, he might actually disinherit him and Richard might be back in the game, as it were. So she is quite keen for Richard to go and visit Philip to say to him, let's make a deal. Let's us make a deal so we can actually then fight against Henry and John. That's kind of the plan at this point. So this is the bit where we go to Philip's chamber, not that other bit, the one I said, looking at the wrong notes. So Geoffrey has gone to the chamber first, and he's trying to persuade Philip that he should do a deal with him, at which point John overhears that and comes out and says, oh, you rotten swine, you tricked me. And Geoffrey says, yes, 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 we've all tricked everybody, so what? That's when Richard arrives and offers the Vexin and Brittany for Philip's help. And Philip says, well, you know, give me all that, what might I possibly do? And he says, you're going to start a war with Henry, against Henry and all the others. At which point, Henry then arrives, and through carefully getting Philip to do some boasting, he finds out all of Philip's plans. At which point, this is where everybody starts coming out from behind the arrases and sort of saying, oh, how dare you, how dare you. And this is where the whole sort of Richard and Philip love triangle thing comes into play as well, because that's where that comes out, and Philip tells Henry all about it. Geoffrey feels that John plotted with Philip and says to Eleanor and Henry, I'm all that's left. Hey, make me king, make me king. And they go, no, no, thank you. That's fine. We don't think we'll bother with that. And so, going right back to the beginning of that scene, here's the bit where Philip first comes in. So Geoffrey and Philip, if you're ready.
Philip, is John here?
Here in my room.
Come on, Philip, this is me.
I've been expecting him.
If the whole thing breaks tonight, then we've reached the end of it.
That's a warning. Thank you.
What if it's an offer?
What if is a game for scholars? What if angels sat on pinheads?
What if I were king?
It's your game, Jeff.
All of England's land in France, from Normandy down to the Spanish border, once I'm king.
All that? What could I do that's worth all that?
By morning, I can be the chosen son. The crown can come to me, but once it does, once Henry's favor falls my way, the war begins.
We have so many wars. Which one is this?
The one that Richard, John, and Eleanor will make. I'll have to fight to keep what Henry, in his rage, is going to give me.
Yes, you will.
That's why I need you, Philip. Will you fight with me against them all?
Against them all?
Don't tell me it's a risk. I wouldn't hand you half of France to fight an easy war.
I wouldn't want you for an enemy.
Are we allies then?
We were born to be.
I should say something solemn, but I haven't time. I'm off to father with the news that John's a traitor.
Excellent. And that's the point where John leaps out. At the end of that scene, when Henry finds out that all his sons have been plotting against him, he then has a right old meltdown and goes, right, in that case, I disinherit you all, and sort of storms out. And it's obviously his low point in the play. Our next scene starts with Alice and Eleanor having a little heart-to-heart in Henry's chamber. So, Alice and Eleanor.
Henry isn't here.
Good, we can talk behind his back.
He's outside walking.
In this cold?
Oh, he'll never notice. What happened?
Don't you know?
He came and stood a while by the fire and went away. You would have liked the way he looked.
There was a scene with beds and tapestries and many things got said. Spiced wine. I'd forgotten Henry liked it. May I stay?
It's your room just as much as mine. We're both in residence.
Packed in like the poor, 3 to a bed.
Did you ever love Henry?
Ever? Back before the flood?
As long ago as Rosamond.
That's prehistory, lamb. There are no written records or survivors.
There are pictures. She was prettier than you.
Oh, much. Her eyes, in a certain light, were violet, and all her teeth were even. That's a rare feature, even teeth. That's a rare feature, even teeth. She smiled to excess, but she chewed with real distinction.
And you hate her even now?
No, but I did. He put her in my place, you see, and that was very hard. Like you, she headed Henry's table. That's my chair.
And so you have her poisoned?
That's a folk tale. Oh, I prayed for her to drop and sang a little when she did. But even Circe has her limits. No, I never poisoned Rosamond. Why aren't you happy? Henry's keeping you. You must be cleverer than I am.
Green becomes you. You must always wear it.
Are you dressing me in envy?
I've tried feeling pity for you, but it keeps turning into something else.
Why pity?
Well, you love Henry. You love his kingdom too. You look at him and you see cities, acreage, coastline, taxes. All I see is Henry. Leave him to me, can't you?
Excellent. So at that point, Henry comes back and there's a little chat with Alice and she goes off. And then he says to Eleanor, actually, I'm not going to make any of the boys king. I've come up with a new plan. And she says, what's that new plan? He says, I'm going to marry Alice and I'm going to get some more sons. And she goes, well, that's a really shit plan because you know the boys will kill whatever. He goes, no, no, no. In that case, I'll keep them locked up. And so at this point, the plan is now to get a new wife and to get some new sons. There is then this new short little scene where Alice and Philip have the conversation about how the fact that all Philip has to do is wait. He doesn't need to do anything because they're all getting old and they'll all fight each other and everybody will get killed. And then he can just come in and take whatever he wants. So then back to the main action is a scene between Henry and Alice, where Henry tells her that his plan is to marry her and that they're going to go off to Rome right away. And he's going to get his marriage to Eleanor annulled because they are still officially married. And she says, that's a good idea. But if you do that, you've got to lock the boys up and you have to lock them up forever. Because if you ever let them out, they will kill whatever our child, your new son. So you're going to have to lock them up forever. And she says, can you do that? And he says, well, I'll just have to see, won't I? At which point we reach the last scene in the play, which happens down in the cellar. All the boys are now locked in the cellar, aging with the royal port, I think is the expression that Henry uses. So they're locked in there and Ella turns up with breakfast things and the breakfast things turn out to be daggers. And so she says, you know, you can escape now. And Richard starts saying, yes, we'll attack the guard, we'll do this. And then Geoffrey says, why don't we just wait in here and kill Dad? And then problem solved. And Ella goes, you can't do that. And he goes, yes, we can. Yes, we can. When Henry finally turns up, she warns him. So he realizes that they were going to kill him. So he draws his sword as if he's going to execute them all. And then he can't do that either. So he just says, go on, get out, all of you. So that just leaves Henry and Eleanor in the dungeon together for the last little bit of dialogue, which we're going to do now. So Henry and Eleanor, these are the last page of the play, basically.
I should have killed you years ago.
There's no one peeking. Do it now.
I've wasted fortunes, squandered lives, spent everything to buy this pit. I've got an eye for value. This is what I've made. I meant to do so much.
Is this a play for pity?
Not from you. You put me here. You made me do mad things. You bled me.
Shoulder it yourself. Don't put it on my back. You've done what you've done and no one but yourself has made you do it. Pick it up and carry it. I can. My losses are my work.
What losses? I've been cheated, not you. I'm the one with nothing.
Lost your life's work, have you? Provinces are nothing, land is dirt. I've lost you. I can't ever have you back again. You haven't suffered. I could take defeat like yours and laugh. I've done it. If you're broken, it's because you are brittle. You are all that I have ever loved. Christ, you don't know what nothing is. I want to die.
You don't.
I want to die.
Stop saying that. Let me do something, damn you. This is terrible.
Henry, I want to die.
You will, you know. Wait long enough and it'll happen.
So it will.
We're in a cellar and you're going back to prison and my life is wasted and we've lost each other and you're smiling.
It's the way I register despair. We're jungle creatures, Henry, and the dark is all around us. See them? In the corners, you can see the eyes.
And they can see ours. I'm a match for anything, aren't you?
I should have been a great fool not to love you.
Come along. I'll see you to your ship.
So soon?
There's always Easter Court.
You let me out for Easter?
Oh, come the resurrection, you can strike me down again.
Perhaps I'll do it next time.
And perhaps you won't.
It must be late and I don't want to miss the tide.
You know, I hope we never die.
I hope so too.
You think there's any chance of it?
Blackout. That's the end of the play. Excellent. Yay! So hopefully you've got an idea of the complexities of the plots and the counter plots and all those sorts of things. When you read the actual play, the text actually just zings along. There's so many great one-liners and jokes and so much depth to it. Though I will say I kept in that last bit again, particularly because one of the issues I think with the play that we will have to work on is that Eleanor sort of goes from I want to die to hey, let's live forever. And there's quite a few things where moods change like that. And either they're really going to jolt if we do it badly, or the audience will understand why there's been this sudden change from everything's terrible to, hey, everything's all right, or why people have these... the play was written in 1966, and to my mind, it's got a few of these like 1966 declamations that people suddenly say stuff that you think, well, you wouldn't really say that, you perhaps just act it. So we're gonna have to work on how we do those, or whether we do them. Again, Nick, I don't cover your ears a bit, because like I cut Shakespeare if it's too hard, so we can cut this if it's too hard as well. If the audience are going to get it, cut it if it gets in the way. But we'll have a play. I'm not saying we must take certain lines out or keep certain lines. Depends how good my actors are and how good my directing is, I suppose. But that's hopefully giving you a feel, and those are the bits, as I said, that we're going to use for auditions. Now, just so you know, there's not much more to go, promise you. We are doing it in the square tower, and you should hopefully all be able to see the screen now. Doing it that way on, so we're facing the as you go into the square tower, we're doing it against the right-hand wall. So our set will be sort of like this. So this is the stage area with people on three sides. So very close, very intimate. And our scenes will basically just be like this one, Alex's and Henry's chamber, a couple of stools, a chest, a rug, and a bench. And so we'll have our set moving people will be bringing the stuff on and off and rearranging it just to give the different feels, because there's only so much you can do with lighting. If we're not actually bringing any settage in, we need to give a different feel for things. So I've planned out sort of like beginnings of things. And like, this is Philip's chamber. So we've got the two arrases there for people to hide behind. One's meant to be a bed, but it just gets in the way. So I want to leave as much space as possible for our actors to act. So minimal stuff on the stage, but again, we have to remember all the time that we have people on all three sides, so we're going to have to be cognizant of that. Now, I've measured the space out, and that stage space is 5 meters by 3 meters, more or less. So that's the space we've got in HQ. So it should mean we should be able to rehearse everything sort of pretty much as is, just remembering there's people on three sides. Okay, so that's that. The audition pieces, as I said, I can send those out to everybody afterwards. I'll put those in chat. The audition itself, hopefully we'll keep it relatively fun. As you can see, the pieces are very short. because I just want to get a feel of how people interact with other people. So it might be a case you might do the same bit 2 or 3 times, but with somebody different each time, rather than having great long pieces you only get one go at. Okay, so they're deliberately kept quite short and punchy, but I thought they were bits that at least gave some of the character of each of the characters. Okay, so the Jeffrey bit, he's being a bit sort of, all wheedly, and John's being a bit, oh, what's going on? And Richard's being, and Eleanor's just being Eleanor, and Henry's being Henry. Okay, so that was kind of the idea for that. Signing up for the show, if after tonight you're interested, I did print out all these things for you to fill in that you could give me if we were face-to-face. Obviously, we can't do that. So if you could either message me through Facebook to say, yes, you're interested, or if you haven't got that, my email, I will pop that in the chat before we finish. Actually, could you type my email in there? You know what it is? So auditions are the 30th of November and the 2nd of December, so that's next Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be starting rehearsals from January.
Tuesday and Thursday.
Sorry?
Tuesday and Thursday.
Is that what I said?
No, you said Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday and Thursday. Sorry, thank you, David. Yes, the 30th and the 2nd of November, Tuesday and Thursday at the HQ from 7:30. Get-in is the 27th of March. And I did originally say to do 4 performances, but I think we might actually do 5 now. I'm going to change the license to go from the Tuesday. So we'll do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because the way I've got the seats, we only get about 60 odd people in. So I thought, well, let's add another 60 in because it only costs 30 quid a night for the license. We might as well do it. We need to sell 3 seats. So yeah, so it'll be a Tuesday to Saturday run because there should be very little to do on the get-in other than set the lights up and set the seats up because there is no set. The set is the wonderful square tower. I think that was everything on my list, apart from any questions anybody's got. You're all on mute, so yes, David.
Are you requesting any accents for certain characters?
I was going to ask that as well.
Good question.
No, I'm not, because James, you may correct me on this, because we're in Sheen On anyway, aren't we? And I vaguely thought that I knew that Richard the Lionheart spoke very little English himself and spoke mostly French. So I'm assuming everybody's going to be speaking French, so we don't need to do a French accent. Would that be fair, James?
Yeah, that sounds fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're all just speaking a version of French.
Is that hello French?
No.
I was going to say hello all the time.
No.
I wanted the clue.
Definitely not. Any other questions?
When are you looking to start rehearsing, Rob?
Sometime early January. Sometime early January. Because what was it? How you describe Much Ado is lastminute.com?
Very well scheduled, though.
Very well. Very well.
Who's doing the schedule?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Paula's doing the schedule. Paula and Dickie, because they've got those kind of minds. Yeah, it's not one of my strong points. Anything else?
Is Dickie all right? Never let a peep out of him all evening.
Sorry?
I'm trying not to cough. And
I got told off for it, Dickie, so yeah. Good choice.
I'm on mute and disappearing when I'm coughing.
Phil is doing the lighting for us. Those of you who know Phil, so we'll all be beautifully lit. Music, yeah, we're not doing anything special here. It's going to be some sort of god-awful medieval drone probably, because it's not the most, because we're even too early for the Renaissance, aren't we? So Renaissance music isn't too bad. Medieval music, if anybody's got a good source of medieval music that says, hey, these were the bangers from 1183, I'd be delighted to hear them.
Not David playing the guitar then?
No, guitars weren't invented then. Neither, unfortunately, I'm finding out, were bottles.
And lions.
Oh, didn't even have bloody bottles.
They had lutes.
Yeah, I think they were lutes. But
No, I think
David, can you play the lute?
They had
Give it a damn good go. Some would say I can't play the guitar. Let's be
They
honest.
had sort of
Doesn't stop me.
reed instruments like shawms and things, didn't they?
Yeah, so bagpipes and crap like that. But yes, I was reading about just how awful all the wine was because it would have all gone off and rancid in the barrels and was disgusting and all sorts of things. So yeah. So when he says aging with the royal port, he means going off with the royal port. So yeah.
Cheers.
Are you going to dress it medieval?
Yes.
In period?
Yeah, as much as possible. Though we're not going to be like strictly historical because I think most of the English, most of the public, 1183 up to about sort of like 1500. They're not going to know, are they?
They wouldn't be wearing mail in the castle, would they? Or would they?
Sorry, what's that, Tim?
Would they be wearing chain mail in the castle?
No, we're going
to family party.
I have had brief conversations with Lauren. It's going to be sort of cloaks and layers and wools and things like that, rather than.
It's going to be basically crud.
Yeah.
Cheap crud.
Stuff that makes it look like it's warm because we are meant to be the Lion in Winter in Chinon.
Yes.
I think he talks about it snowing at one point, so it's meant to be cold.
Yeah.
So,
cheap, warm, and cruddy.
Yeah.
Because they didn't wash.
Yeah.
I used to have a solicitor's firm called that.
Yeah, cheap, warm, and cruddy, and lots of fur and skin.
Skin.
Yeah.
And dead animals.
Oh, that's
not actor skin.
No, dead animal skin.
That comes later, Nick.
It sounds lovely.
It's going to be very, very glamorous.
Oh. Just going to try and put the audition pieces in the chat because you can actually download it from there, can't you?
What?
The audition pieces. I put them in the chat. You can download them from there if you want to, and I'll put them on Facebook as well. There we go. So if you can get into chat, if you can get into the chat, you can actually download them straight from there if you want.
I don't know.
No.
If not, I'll stick them on Facebook and I'll see if Aaron wouldn't mind emailing it out to everybody as well. Thank you.
I say, will I go?
All right then. Well, I hope I haven't put anybody off. It's going to be fun. It's a cracking play. There's some brilliant parts, great lines. The audience never quite know what's coming next, and I think it's going to be absolutely wonderful in the sort of gloomily lit square tower. What better venue could you possibly have for this play? So, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you for your info. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hope you feel better soon.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You can go back to the football now, Joe.
Oh, I've been watching it.
Why are you called Max, Roger?
I've had it on my phone. Been quite a good game, to be fair.
Joe, I'll give you a tenner if you can remind me of anything that James said during his section.
When I heard it, I was like, I sat through the last one and I was like, not again. No,
Joe Bartlett.
I can't.
Right then.
Yeah, but last time, do you remember how long it was? It was so long.
There was lots of PowerPoint.
If I could have come off mute quick enough, I was going to say, confused you will be. For those who remember soap.
Be nice to me. He put a lot of effort into that. Right then, I'm going to finish the meeting now for everybody so we can watch
We've got Bake Off. See you later.
Bye. Bye, everyone.